Cool. Why don't we move on into the next one then? So this person, this is a shitty situation. This person wrote, I spent $23,000 on chemotherapy for my cat, only for him to die anyway. My savings are drained, my credit cards are maxed out, and I have no clue how to get myself out of this mess. Between my debt payments, my rent, and my other bills, I'm barely able to make a dent on my debt. The worst part is I feel like I was finally getting ahead before all of this happened.
Ugh. As a dog mom, I totally understand this, like wanting to do what's best for your pet. $23,000 on chemotherapy for my cat. I mean, that is a lot. Personally, I mean, I guess it would have to depend on the situation and all of that, but I don't know if I want to put my animal through chemotherapy. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Yeah. And I guess it depends on, how old they are and everything, but pets don't live forever. I would say cats, like 15 years maybe, but dogs are probably less than that depending on the breed. But it's it depends on how old they are. Like if you're, I mean, it depends at any age, I guess. Like, do you want to put them through chemotherapy? I just don't know if it's worth it. But I think the biggest thing is for me and what I do with my pets, I actually have a little sinking fund for them for these vet type visits or whatever comes up. Now, obviously, $23,000 for chemotherapy is not going to be included in that, right? But anything that might pop up, to a normal vet visit. I've never had a major surgery or anything. I've had my one dog had to go to the emergency vet, but this is next level.
Yeah, I don't think anyone likes to pay for insurance of any kind. And then when you talk about pet insurance, I feel like most people are kind of like, that's a little ridiculous, to have pet insurance. Unless you're this person who had to pay $23,000, that's crazy. But yeah, I don't know. When my wife and I, when our last dog, before he passed away, I remember he was getting things were on the rocks a little bit, and I remember we had a conversation where it was like, hey, what's our limit?
Yeah.
And it's a hard conversation to have because you're attaching money to the life of something that you love, but it's a conversation that you need to have where it's hey, we're going to take our dog into the vet. What's our limit to where if they say, hey, they need, X, Y, and Z, and it's going to cost you, $5,000, is that above or below our limit? And we had set a threshold for ourselves, all right, if something that our dog needs is more than $1,500 for a single thing, I don't know that we're going to do it. Yeah. He was already old. He was an older dog. He had lived, we felt like we gave him a great life. And it just, for us, that was our limit. And we were trying to save to buy a home. We knew all these other things were kind of at play. And that's, for some people they might think, oh, that's kind of heartless. You could have spent $3,000 or whatever it is. Right. But I think you got to have that conversation, especially if you don't have pet insurance.
Yeah.
Now knowing what we went through with the emergency vet, the x-rays, all this random stuff. And it turned out that the vet was completely wrong on what it was anyway. After going through all that, I'm okay, we definitely need to get pet insurance if we get a younger dog. Yeah. If we adopt an older dog, it's all right, as long as you give him a good life, I think you kind of did your job there. Yeah. But pet insurance, for how cheap it is, I feel like it's so worth it.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess look into what it covers too, because I think probably all policies are different. I've never had pet insurance just because most of my dogs that I've adopted have been older, and it just wouldn't make sense for that. But I think another thing to realize is that veterinarians and they run businesses, you have to know that not all are created equal. For example, I've loved every vet that we've ever had. The one I had in Pittsburgh was amazing. The one I have here is really awesome. And what I like about them is that when something's wrong, they start with the lowest tier option. Hey, let's start here and see if that fixes it, rather than, I know some vets would be let's do blood work. Let's do an ultrasound. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then your bill is $2,000 and you're wait a second, I don't even know what the issue is. So that's something to keep in mind too. I know when issues already come up and you're at these places and it's riding your bill's already high, you're not going to go get another second opinion because then you have another bill. You know what I mean? But just vetting your vet to make sure that they're not a place that's always just let's do the most of the most to make sure that this is something isn't wrong. I've always had a vet that just starts at the bottom and says, hey, what do you feel comfortable with? You know what I mean? I've been blessed like that. So this wouldn't be an issue for me. But I've always said too, I have a 13-year-old dog right now. I'm not going to do anything crazy with her. She's living her best life. She's snoring right beside me right now. I'm going to let her live her life out. She's happy. She's healthy. We go to the vet every so often if something goes wrong. They say she's fine. So it's like, I'm not going to do these crazy things for my dog. Like I said, I think there's situations where you can, but I don't know. You have to determine if it's in the best interest of your pet, honestly.
I have always been skeptical of vets and dentists because
100%.
they run businesses, and it's a business. At the end of the day, they're in the service industry. They care for people, but it's a business. And to me, I'm always like, do I really need that thing with my dentist? Because my teeth don't hurt. They're like, well, yeah, but 5 years it might hurt. I'm like, we'll see where it's at in 5 years then. Yeah. But I always go with the cheapest option, especially at the dentist. Anyway, those are two areas where for sure. But for this person, I'm like, $23,000, like, I imagine when you pay for this, it wasn't like, hey, here's the $23,000 bill, go and pay it. Yeah. I imagine it was accumulated $23,000 over the course of however long this chemotherapy went on, plus the initial assessments of all of this. Like, at what point where they're like, all right, my savings is gone. Let me keep doing this. All right, one credit card's maxed out. All right, let me throw it on another credit. Like at a certain point, like this person just, and I get it, you can love your animal so much, but like, at a certain point, you gotta understand, like, I am not making good financial decisions, and all of this is being run through my emotions. You know, like, I don't know. It seems like there were so many opportunities for this person to realize, hey, like, enough is enough. And you can say enough is enough with a lot of love too, and that is just wild. And that's why, like, now, me and my wife, when it comes to like a lot of different things, we always have our limit. Now it's always like a number that we've discussed where it's like, hey, like, this is the most we're willing to spend, and even if we really, really want to pursue whatever that thing is, if it goes above this limit, like, it's just a no, even if it's just barely, it's just a no. And I feel like you got to be able to have a conversation like that about a situation like this. Yeah.
And again, this is super emotional. You're trying to do the right thing. You want to do what's best for your pet. But sometimes I feel like when you're keeping your pet alive like this, it's more for you than it is for like them, especially when you're putting them through chemotherapy. Yeah. I'm just not doing that. And I know that, we'll get pushback on that or whatever, but I'm like the biggest dog lover there is. I volunteer at my local rescue. I, rescue animals, and like, I'm a big dog person. And it's like, I still am not going to do crazy things, to keep them alive. Now, let's say a dog broke their leg and they're like 5 years old. Of course, we're going to take care of that. Yeah. But if they're an old dog, like if Maggie somehow, she's 13, if they would say, hey, she has cancer, do you want to do this X, Y, Z? No. I'm just going to let her live the rest of her life. It's not going to make her lifespan any longer, It doesn't change anything on that front. But yeah, at the end of the day, set your limits, put some money aside, or get pet insurance. Make sure you know what it covers, and approach your vet bills that way. But pets also have issues, so you need to have some money set aside for it. I say that all the time. And I feel like it's only getting more expensive these days. $23,000 on a cat? That's crazy.
Crazy. This would definitely get pushed back. I could see someone spending $23,000 on a dog they really love. For me, a cat, I'm like, come on. That's wild. Nick. That sounds crazy to say out loud. I know. Yeah. I know. Where this person can go from here, though, I mean, honestly, if they found themselves in a place where they spent emotionally, like, to an extreme, where are the other areas in your life where you have the potential to do that? And, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning, you got to just show up. You got to bring full awareness of the whole situation. Figure out, like, where are you going wrong in the other parts of your finances as well. This person, said they drained their savings. Obviously, they did have a savings, so maybe they were good with their finances before this. But, I feel like from here, like, definitely don't get another animal until you get yourself back on stable feet. Then, like you said, look at pet insurance. From here, though, like, get those credit cards organized from smallest to largest, start paying them off, and then start building that savings again. I think that's the best thing that they can do. Not only to just like emotionally recover from this, but also obviously to financially recover from it as well. Yeah. And like, let go of the shame. Like, it sucks that you did that. And then your cat also passed away. So it's just shitty all around. But like, don't hold on to it. Just move forward with it. And you know what you'll do in the future because you've already done this, right? The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.